Bob Henderson and his 7-year-old son Adam looked a little haggard, but were in good spirits after a cold, wet night on Stockton Beach. Yesterday morning they'd left their Bolton Point house for some four-wheel driving in the sand dunes. They were expected back by nightfall, but heading home along the beach north of the Cygna, in torrential rain, they struck trouble.
On the way back we blew a heater hose. I've rerouted that and bypassed the heater and got to going again, then we blew a head gasket.
As the rain poured down and darkness fell, Bob realised he had no hope of finding help till morning. He took a canvas top off the Suzuki four-wheel drive and with Adam and dog Mush, bedded down for a night in the sandhills.
I was a bit worried about the boy might, dehydrate, get too cold, so I had to wrap myself around him, and the little blue heeler climbed in, wrapped herself around my kidneys to keep me warm.
Dressed only in cotton shirts, they survived the storm. 7-year-old Adam was more worried about the high tide and golfing their stranded vehicle.
I was just worried about seeing me Suzuki was going to go.
A police search early this morning tracked down the car. 10 kilometres down the beach, 2 weary walkers were found eating a late breakfast.
They were found safe and well outside the Fullerton Cove shop eating meat pies during the morning.
Well, you must have been pleased that it turned out like this.
Oh, certainly, yes. It's great when we have that sort of result and see the family reunion at the end of it. Yeah.
The Hunter threw itself vigorously into the battle to win the Anzac Frigate contract for AWS. There were public meetings, the frigate bus and the petition. The letdown when it was announced the contract would go to Victoria was understandable. However, Labor politicians were insistent Newcastle hadn't really lost at all.
Newcastle is going to have $700 million invested.
Amacon does plan to do a considerable amount of work in the Hunter, but the amounts are far less defined than the Prime Minister's words suggest.
We hope it'll be more than 700 million. Maybe it'll be 746 or 802 or
but
whatever.
It could be less than that as well.
It could be.
The federal government says New South Wales will do 40% of the Australian frigate work. However, another major defence contract adds a note of caution to such predictions. The contract to build 6 submarines for the Royal Australian Navy was awarded to the Australian Submarine Corporation in 1986. Figures leaked from a Senate subcommittee show that percentages of work promised then bear little resemblance to the reality in 1990. Managing Director Dr. Don Williams says it's unreasonable to expect the figures to match up. Ian Travis of Gavenge is confident Amacon is genuine in its predictions. However, he's under no illusion that political guarantees will ensure work comes here.
The word guarantee is somewhat ill-chosen. I think, as I said before, we should look at it as a benchmark. That's what Amacon believe can be done here competitively.
In 1988, the government announced the new Office of Labour and Market Adjustment. The office is designed to find manpower shortages in industry and place skilled people there after retraining or redirection. Minister for Industrial Relations and member for Shortland, Peter Morris, says the scheme will give tradespeople new confidence.
What we hope he will gain from it will be that his skills will be more quickly taken up by an employer. For employers, what we would hope that their needs could be more quickly identified and more quickly met.
Mr Morris says the program was trialled in Illawarra, but it hasn't been established in Newcastle until now. Government consultants had to iron out program faults by talking with employer groups and trade unions, and the funds had not been made available for the program until this week. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
As one of the inaugural teams in the National Basketball League, the Falcons have one of the worst import records. Many players who arrived to take up playing contracts with the local team have been sent home before the season proper. This year, Tom Curry has succumbed to a knee injury and is already back in the States, underlying once again the difficulty in screening imported players. His replacement is James Bullock, who played with Melbourne 2 seasons back, and he arrives tomorrow. Meanwhile, given all the upheaval within the club, coach Ken Cole is confident of a great year.
I really want our goal to be to make the finals, because I think with the talent that we've got, and watching how we played in the United States, particularly against Alabama, that is still figuring in the finals in the United States, we know that we can play with anybody in the country. But you've got to get there first, and it's the consistency that you need to make finals.
Today's strike by students was the culmination of a row between staff at Raymond Terrace High and the Education Department. 2 weeks ago today, teachers removed their pupils from classrooms because they feared liquid leaking from PCB capacitors in light and fan fittings could pose a health risk. There appeared to be a stalemate. Teachers refused to go back into classrooms until all PCB fittings were removed. The Education Department, though agreeing to remove leaking PCBs, said the school would have to wait in turn until July for a complete removal.
But there's no way in which I can change the time when Raymond Terrace High School will have its lights changed. I've got schools all across the region that are waiting patiently for their turn on the program.
But now that date has been brought forward to May the 14th, and every schoolroom has been checked and deemed safe. Teachers returned to class, but the pupils refused. Principal John Groulton gathered the striking pupils in the school's quadrangle and threatened them with disciplinary action for subordination. They then amassed in the school oval in the pouring rain to get their message across. Already hundreds of signatures have been gathered and notes brought in from worried parents who fear the PCBs could still be dangerous. And students claim staff are being given free blood tests to gauge the toxic effects from leaking capacitors, and they want the same treatment.
No, we have no guarantee of safety, and that is the reason we are not attending our lessons.
How many kids are there involved? How many students here are refusing to go to school?
All of us and more, and the whole school.
Do the teachers think it's safe to go in the classrooms?
Well, I don't think they do, but they've got no choice. If they don't go inside, they get a $1,000 fine a day. And I'm sure they're on our side. If they had the choice, I'm sure they'd be outside with us.
Well, this morning, a whole heap of girls and boys all brought notes from their parents saying that they could not enter the rooms, and then all the principals have just been ringing their parents, and now we're sort of made to go back in the classrooms when we were told they were safe, and yesterday another leak was found.
Mr. Groulton tried to maintain order and encourage them back to class, reassuring them of complete safety.
Yesterday's leak was immediately attended by an electrician and proved to be water, not PCB. The teachers agreed yesterday to the department's proposal not only to treat every leak as an urgent priority and not only remove it but repair the whole room in the same day to make it PCB clear. Not only that, but to move our scheduled date for the complete renewal of the lighting system in the school up to the 14th of May, which is now only a few weeks away.
But it would look to a lot of people that you've now lost control over your school and your pupils.
This business will dissipate very rapidly now.
But there were conflicting reports tonight over whether the pupils did return to the classrooms. The school said most did. A parent said around 1,000 students remained outside. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
Witnesses told police the northbound Datsun sedan suddenly swerved, crossed the median strip and ploughed under the rear axles of a semi-trailer heading in the opposite direction. For Joanne May Delaney, it was over in seconds. The car was crushed by the rear wheels of the rig and then scattered onto the median strip. Wreckage spread for hundreds of metres down the highway. One wheel was torn from the truck and slammed into an oncoming car, causing only minor damage. The 26-year-old tax office clerk, the driver of the sedan, was dead before rescue crews could reach her. Traffic slowed as emergency workers cleared the site, but police were able to keep vehicles moving past the accident scene. Another road death on the Pacific Highway earlier today, this one at Raleigh north of Urunga on the state's north coast. Police say the semi carrying a full load of bottled beer braked suddenly on the southbound approach to a tight bend. The trailer lifted from its mount, overtook the prime mover, coming to rest on the cabin. The driver, a 24-year-old from Victoria, was crushed to death. Police are investigating whether the wet road and foggy conditions contributed to this accident. And a young man was critically injured in an accident on the F3 freeway just after 6:30 this morning. Jeffrey Taylor of Batteau Bay was travelling south on the freeway just north of the Brooklyn Bridge. His car veered off the road in wet and foggy conditions and slammed into a cutting. A police motorcyclist on his way to work was travelling behind and narrowly avoided being killed himself.
I was directly behind it on the police cycle. I've gone down past the accident because we had heavy vehicles locking up all around us. It was one of the most dangerous situations I've seen on the road for quite some time.
Two other off-duty emergency service workers came to the young man's aid using a fire extinguisher to put out the blazing wreck. It took some time to stabilise Taylor before he was removed from the car. He's now in a critical condition in Royal North Shore Hospital with head injuries. This accident, combined with another three-car pile-up which followed, caused traffic to bank up for many kilometres. John Church, NBN News.
There wasn't any time for 198cm James Bullock to get acclimatised as it was straight to the stadium, be introduced by Ken Cole and then hit the boards. After a 14-hour non-stop flight from the States, a tired but relaxed ball player is back where he wants to be in the National Basketball League of Australia.
Good to be back. I've been trying for the last year to get back, so I'm looking forward to the season, looking forward to playing for Ken and Greg and see what happens.
Bullock came to prominence with US team Purdue in 1987 and then joined Andrew Gaze at the Melbourne Tigers in 88. His first season in the NBL was full of highs and lows, with selection in the inaugural All-Stars clash a bonus. In that game he showed that he is a brilliant player. For Coach Cole, Bullock will add to the strength under the bucket at both ends of the court and will assist both Neil Turner and Greg Lazard. And it's a vastly different team that he joins to the one he played against 2 years back.
They had McDaniel and Everett and guys who shoot the ball well. I mean, I had trouble guarding Wayne. He come out here and shoot the ball from everywhere. So I think they got a different team now, and I'm looking forward to playing.
Labor consolidated its position in the Hunter region, regaining all electorates except the division of Lyne, where sitting National Country Party member Bruce Cowan was returned. In Newcastle, Alan Morris polled nearly 3 times the votes of independent candidate Lee Morn, increasing his majority by 3%.
It was said that Lee Morn was in there with a chance. Did you ever think that he would be any competition?
My feedback in that first week or two was that the opportunity was not there. The people had had 2 years of independence and informed their views about that, and whether it was Lee Morn or anybody else, the people of Newcastle wanted to be part of the system and part of government, not rushing up and down the sidelines shouting and screaming.
In the Shortland electorate, Peter Morris regained a seat ahead of Liberal Lynn Hall, while Bob Brown received little competition from his rivals, with an 11.1% swing needed to unseat him in the electorate of Charlton. Although it looks like Eric Fitzgibbon will increase Labor's majority in the seat of Hunter, the Liberals have upped their votes by 7.5%. Candidate Ashley Saunders, though, blames his defeat on the poor performance of the National Party.
Whereas the Liberal vote has increased by more than 7%, the National Party vote has gone down by more than 10%, perhaps even 12%, and being outpolled by the Democrats. That's something that clearly I think both the Liberal Party and the National Party have got to look at locally to see exactly what can be done to make sure that that sort of thing doesn't happen again, to make sure that we can work together to win the seat from Labor.
The swing against the National Party was also obvious in the seat of Lyne. Although Bruce Cowan won on primary votes, the once safe National Party seat took a shaking. While the National Party needs to do some hard thinking on where they went wrong and why they lost so many rural votes, the Labor Party is sitting pretty. Despite the loss of the frigate and submarine contracts and industrial hardship in the region, the Labor Party has managed to increase its popularity. Jodie McKay for NBN News. In the letter addressed to Defence Minister Kim Beazley, Carrington Slipways manager Don Laverick says the company will be withdrawing its tender to build mine hunters for the Singapore Navy and will cease all overseas marketing activities. Mr Laverick says the company can no longer afford to promote the Australian design mine hunter without financial support from the government, and that has not been forthcoming. Instead, he says the government is seeking to impose substantial charges on the company, which are steadily eroding the price advantages it has over international competitors. Mr Laverick also says the continual deferment of a mine hunter order by the Royal Australian Navy has been a major setback to the company. The letter, which was leaked from Canberra, follows reports last week that Carrington Slipways is considering the future of its fiberglass division at Tomago. It's now almost certain the high-tech facility which manufactures the mine hunters will be scaled down or closed completely, with the loss of up to 90 jobs. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
Former Penrith star Neil Baker was always going to be a thorn in the side of the Butcher Boys, and he was in the thick of the action in the 13th minute with a smart try. Baker helped stretch the Western Suburbs lead in the first half with some good backing up by Peter Webber, who gathered Baker's chip kick, gave a neat pass to the 5/8, who scored under the post, and the Rosellas led 20-10 at the break. Whatever coach Glenn Armstrong said to his central charges at half-time certainly worked, for on the resumption Kevin Barnier scored his first for the day with a slick move out wide. West hit back immediately when Peter Jenner was on the end of a good backline move, and they went to a 10-point lead once again. Back came the Butcher Boys, and it was that man Barnier who again crossed, and with the conversion there was only 4 points in it. With 15 minutes remaining, fullback Dwayne Nelson chipped through, and centre Jeff Rock dived on the ball for the try that levelled the scores at 26-all. Baker broke the deadlock with a penalty in the 35th minute. Rock equalised for Central with a penalty a couple of minutes later, and then right on the full-time siren, Peter Webber stripped the ball for the Rosellas. It went to Baker, who got the ball onto Browning, who did the rest, and West were home 32-28.
Since the Knights were formed in 1988, Sam Stewart has been one of the club's most highly rated players. But today, after more than 50 consecutive games in first grade, he was relegated to the bench.
It sort of happens to us all, you know, the Brett Kennys, the Wally Lewises, you know, we all sort of, at this sort of level of sport, it's hard to, I suppose, maintain the consistency.
Consistency has been Stewart's problem this season. After a meeting with coach Alan McMahon, he was given the bad news. McMahon says it was a tough decision, but says slamming Sam is jaded after 2 years of full-time football.
What do you put the form slump down to?
Well, the intensity that's required of the player in the Winfield Cup. You know, you've got 22 rounds and they're very hard rounds. Apart from that, you've got a big off-season build-up in strength and training. In between that, Sam packed a tour of England and France in.
James Goulding comes into the side at front row and Chief Paul Harrigan moves back into second row. Michael Hagan will be the new skipper. Meanwhile, Stewart is expected to play at some stage against Wests, and Sam says he'll be firing to impress the selectors.
If I do come on a little later in the game, well, obviously they're a little tighter and I'll come on fresh and hopefully I can do a bit of damage.
It's planned to be the New Year's party that Newcastle city centre never had. Exactly 3 months ago, all was quiet inside these barricades, standing as silent reminders of the earthquake horror.
We feel it's time that the city put the past behind it and start to look ahead in accord with the university motto and look ahead in a more positive light.
The theme will be Reaching for the Stars, with an appropriate venue, the Star Village. And among the non-stop musical and dramatic entertainment will be some established stars as well as budding local artists. And it's hoped other city centre venues will adopt the New Year theme that will merge after midnight into an April Fool's extravaganza.
The tanker, bound for Sydney, overturned after clipping a median strip at the intersection of Parry Street and Stewart Avenue. The crushing force as the tank rolled split the tank in several places, spewing the oily load across the roadway and into stormwater drains. Emergency services worked for hours to stop the spill, and several firemen were taken to hospital, overcome with fumes. Although most of the sludge was cleaned up, the mix of creosote and asphalt would have softened the surface, and with heavy traffic the bitumen would have been separated, eventually peeling off the road surface. Newcastle Council redirected crews this morning from road patching to dig up a 100-metre strip of the surface and lay new asphalt. The Water Board took steps to ensure none of the oily scum made its way into the harbour by blocking stormwater canals with earth dams. A council spokesman late this afternoon said council will be billing the trucking company for the costs involved in cleaning up the spill. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
At times it seems like a lifetime ago, but actually it's 3 months to the day since our city was devastated by that earthquake. Since then a lot of water has passed under the bridge as Novocastrians have knuckled down to rebuilding their city and their lives. In fact, for many it now seems like just a bad dream, something to be pushed away to make room for more positive thoughts. But for others there can be no forgetting. People like Yvette Waugh and Rick Murray, both who were inside the Workers' Club when it collapsed. Yvette was carried from the building in the arms of a fireman, her pelvis and 3 ribs broken, blood pouring from a huge cut to her head. Today, Yvette still feels the agony with every step she takes. Jobless, she spends her days in doctors' surgeries, lying in bed, or at the hydrotherapy pool at Rankin Park Hospital.
I haven't had any benefits from the hydrotherapy yet, except on the day I feel great. My body sort of isn't so stiff and sore. You know, I feel like I'm carrying an armour plate on that part of my body. It's not mine. It's something I drag around with me. That part of my body is. If it was my house that was hurt, I could get it fixed. You know, I could get a new one. I could get a brand new house. And I've got to try and get my body back to what it was. I can't go and buy a new body.
Rick Murray's face has become a familiar sight since the quake. He was the roadie with the band Crowded House who had his legs horrifically crushed when the club gave way. At first it was feared they could not be saved. Just last week, Rick climbed out of his wheelchair for the first time. Now he uses walking sticks to hobble about for short distances. At times, he says, the pain is enormous, but he adds that's much easier to bear than the pain of being forgotten.
We never got a get well card or anything from Workers' Club or the Lord Mayor or anyone, you know. Well, the fact is that I'm not a building, I'm a person, you know, and people don't count in this. You know, you're injured, bad luck.
You're just forgotten, you're just pushed aside, you're just part of the rubble that they've carted away.